Hello students, in this session we are going to learn about clustering. So this session and next session will be concentrated on clustering. So what is meant by clustering? By the name itself, already you have done AI, okay, you have done AML, all algorithms you have learnt, right? So what is meant by classification and clustering? Classification, I am just writing class, and what is meant by cluster, okay. So in this regard, here classification is if I am taking any data set, see I am just shifting to ML. So whether the data belongs to class 1 or class 2, okay. That is our clustering part, sorry, classification. Cluster, I'll take the set of elements, this will be C1, this will be C2. So this is called as clustering. So in both the cases, you are taking the relevant relatable items into one cluster and relatable items into one cluster. So coming to the classification, if the elements belongs to this class, I'll put 1. If the elements not belongs to this class, I'll put 0. Now, don't take this part. Here clustering is different when compared to our clustering. So here the clustering basically used in order to store the location where you have to store that particular information. So it is a words originated with the thesauri. So remember, thesauri is a word generated from treasure. Dictionary, Latin word meaning is treasure. So from the treasure this word was generated. So what is meant by treasure? Like our treasure is different, and this is group of words. So if I talk ant, okay, anticipate, anticipating or anticipation. So this complete word location will be mentioned in some place. So this is called as thesauri. So the generated words according to this particular thing were stored at a single place. So the primary purpose is in order to selection of the vocabulary, what type of vocabulary we are using, and next one is how you are combining terms or items. So in order to get more generalized one, you are adding all the similar objects into one cluster. It is also the part of linkages between two clusters can be specified. Suppose this cluster is there, this cluster, what is the linkage between these two clusters, okay. So the term class is frequently used as a synonym for cluster. So for example, if C1 is there, C2 is there, they are interlinked with each other. So this linkage have to be maintained between the cluster, and always this cluster may be called as class also. So in between, if I use a terminology as class, so don't worry, it is a cluster. So the process of clustering, yeah. So this is very important, ma'am. First you have to define the domain. So what is the main cluster you want to form, okay. And after that, what are the examples for your cluster? So if I take object, medicine is a cluster, education is a cluster, finance is a cluster. So according to this, you will form one cluster, form one cluster, form one cluster. If I am taking this medicine, education, finance, remember medicine and education, these are interlinked because whatever the medicine will be, you learnt only through the education thing, and these two are interlinked with your finance, because just I am telling, because there may be an interlink between your clusters. Then what you have to do? For example, once the domain is defined, so you have to identify the objects. What are the attributes of the objects? So if I take medicine as object, education as object, finance an object. So what are the object attributes? See, it is exactly like your DBMS. Okay, in the relational model, you will have the entity and what are the attributes. For example, if I take title or whatever it may be, title, place, job. If I am taking medicine, now my object is medicine. What will be the attributes? What is the name of the medicine? Cost. Main thing is expiry date. And what is your manufacturing date? So like this, first you have to identify the domain, then what is define the domain, and what are the attributes of the domain. And then if you have any relationships between the objects, you have to mention the length or strength of your relationships, and you have to use some algorithm in order to find the relationship between the two objects. Not like with the weight values, we cannot decide that. So what are the class rules? Yeah. Once you identify the domain, you have to follow the class rules in order to form the cluster. First one is, it should be well defined. It should not vaguely defined, and what are the attributes of the each class you have to clearly mention. And always remember, the size of the class should be not be overloaded. It should be always less. And within the class, one object should not dominate other class. I'll tell you the example. For example, I'm taking microcomputers. Okay, one object is microcomputers or microprocessors. Okay, you have these 286 and 386 Pentium, all are comes under your processor. 286, you may have 386, you have Pentium. So suppose the data related to processor is less, and data related to this particular example is more, then what I can do, I can create a class with the name microprocessor. Are you getting my point? So if I am taking computer, yeah, okay, just tell one second, I'll write it once again. So I have a computer class. So this is my class name. So in the class, I have microprocessor, Pentium, Intel, 386 or 286. If you observe that the objects, whatever the data related to these four are microprocessor, right? These four are computers, but internally these are microprocessors. So the dominancy of this microprocessor is more over the computers. So what one can do? Now I will create one more separate class which is called microprocessor, and all those things I will store only microprocessor. So remember, whenever you call computer, so microprocessor is dominating, so you can create another class without domination. Yeah, same example. So remember, microprocessor as synonym. So what you do, it may be better to create a microprocessor into one class, and whether the object can be assigned to that class, you have to decide. So there are additional rules for classes. First one is word coordination approach, word relationships. Word coordination approach means, remember by the name itself, hello, how are you? Okay, hello and how are you? So what is a word coordination? Always hello comes before how are you. I cannot write how are you, then hello. So this I have to remember that. So whenever you are clustering the values or the objects or the words, the coordination should be there. And what is a relationship? What is a relationship between these two phrases? Okay, it may be equal or it may be hierarchical. Three relationships are there. One is equal, one is hierarchical, and one is non-hierarchical. So these two things you have to remember and form the clusters or classes. Yeah, so equivalence relationships are the most common in order to represent synonym. What is meant by synonym? Same meaning. Okay, words are different, but the meaning is same. Next one, hierarchical. So you know inheritance in Java, right? So what is an inheritance? You will have the class A, parent class, inherited with the class B. So in the features of A will be added. So this is your hierarchical. You will have the set of classes. So class 1, class 2, you are getting one more class 3. So this is called inheritance. Okay. So in the previous example we have seen, right? So you had a computer, in the computer you had a microprocessor. So what we have done, I'll draw the diagram, you'll easily understand. Yeah, so your main class will be computer. So your object or a class, then it is have the processor. So processor will be microprocessor. Then you will add all these Pentium, okay, 386, 286 will be all the values for your next class. So what is the relationship between these two things? In the computer, you will have the microprocessor. So next one is homograph resolution. So homograph is a word. Okay, so homograph is a word that will have multiple completely different meanings. Okay, for example, field is there. So field means it may be electronic field or a field of grass or anything. Okay, so these are completely diversity feeling. So you can call any other way, field will don't have the single meaning. So these type of words you have to be very careful when you are clustering them. So you have to remember what is the context of using this particular word. Next one, vocabulary constraints. So you have to remember what are the normalization parts of this vocabulary, and it will have all the stems versus complete words. So we have seen, so connected. So if you remove this, connect is your original word, stem word, and these are all your different types of extensions you are going to use. So whenever you are working these particular words, you should be very careful while creating the classes. Now, there are three basic methods for generation of terraces, means how to get the complete ratio. So handcrafted, co-occurrence, and header modified based. So in the header modified based, you will find all the relationship between linguistic relationship between the letters. Okay, and what are the words appearing in the similar grammatical context are accepted as similar. For example, good, excellent. If you see here, good and excellent are same. Same in the sense, both will give the same meaning little bit, not same. Good is okay, excellent is more good. Okay, so in this context, when I am selecting this as an object, you have to check if these two are similar or not. So this is your, this one. This is exactly opposite of your field word. Next one is linguistic parsing. So in the linguistic parsing, you have to check all the language related thing. You know what is verb, what is an adjective, what is noun, all those things you have to mention, and accordingly you have to do. Okay, so each noun has set of verbs, adjectives, nouns, and co-occurs within mutual information, and you have to calculate the link between those values, then only you have to take into the cluster. If they are not required, you can ignore them. Okay, so this is the basics of the clustering. So in the next session, we will move on into the depth of part of your clustering and what are the techniques we are going to use. Thank you.